Everybody, what's going on? Hellknight here, bringing you another video from Grab the Lantern today. Today I wanted to talk about Teamfight Tactics, and generally what I feel like the long-term viability of the mode is. Now, obviously, Teamfight Tactics is something that Riot are trying to say is here to stay, is going to be something going forward forever, and that's really great. But at the same time, I think that Teamfight Tactics is not something that is likely to last as long as Riot Games think it will for a host of reasons, and those are kind of the crux of the argument that I want to be talking about in today's video. Now, first and foremost, I think the biggest issue that you're going to have with Teamfight Tactics, I think it's a fun game, I really do, but the biggest problem is that Teamfight Tactics is not a deep enough experience to stand alone and to have the same kind of impact that Riot Games have sort of grown to expect from basically the success they had with League of Legends. League of Legends blew up in a way that nobody expected it to and garnered a ton of attention, and so far for 10 years has stayed a very consistent game, a very solid game. Now, some of that is starting to wear off a little bit, and that's something I might talk about in a later video, but either way, there's no denying that League of Legends was a huge success because people are still rapidly playing the game 10 years down the road. Teamfight Tactics, on the other hand, so far has launched to, I would say, a decent amount of interest, a decent amount of respect from people. There are a lot of people who really like playing Teamfight Tactics. There are a lot of people who don't even play League of Legends who love playing Teamfight Tactics, so that is a good thing. But the mode itself doesn't have enough interest and doesn't have enough, I would say, flexibility or enough long-term viability in order to make it worth keeping around and in order to make it sort of worth Riot's money. And the biggest reason I'm saying this is because Teamfight Tactics doesn't really have the ability to sustain itself in the same vein that League of Legends did. Now, League of Legends already had a ton of flexibility. There were a lot of characters to choose from, different places to play them, different items to build on them, and obviously Riot could always release or rework other champions, and that way people would have even more interest in the game and more reasons to come back and play it again. TFT, on the other hand, doesn't have a lot of that because most of the action is out of your control. There's nothing you can do in Teamfight Tactics, for the most part, to influence what happens. Sometimes it's just RNG, and you just kind of have to accept that, and that's sort of where the game is at. The other issue is that Riot's usual strategy for encouraging interest in their game long-term, things like releasing new champions, is actively detrimental to Teamfight Tactics. The problem being is that the more characters you release in TFT, the more bloated the pool becomes. So if you're trying to get a 2-star champion, for example, or even the coveted 3-star champion, but if there are 140 plus characters to choose from that could possibly end up in the 5 slots you have in your shop, that really inhibits your ability to find those 3-star units in order to get duplicates and finish that out. And that is kind of a big deal because that really does affect sort of how the game is played and the viability of how this is going to actually go, because you don't have the ability to just say, oh, well, I can guaranteed get these units. The more 1-stars they add, the more 2-stars they add, etc., the harder it becomes to ever get the duplicates. And that's a big part of Teamfight Tactics. If you can't get duplicates, well, you're just building for traits, and that's not very interesting. And one of the fun parts of the game is getting that duplicate, finally finding the last Garen, the last Vayne that you were looking for, and saying, hell yeah, I finally got this character that I'm looking for, now we can smash some face. Now, there are possible ways that Riot could deal with this, particularly in having the game pull a certain subset of champions. So let's say, for example, the game says, I'm going to include Wild, Shapeshifter, Demons, Brawlers, Knights, Nobles, and nothing else, because maybe those pools are big enough that they can sustain a game on their own. Now, obviously, there are a lot of thought you would have to put behind it in order to make sure that the ratios pan out, that most comps can be built, but either way, that sort of thing would be what Riot would have to try and do with the game in order to make it so that you could still find enough champions to make a set. Now, that is one potential option, but then you would have to find additional support. Like I said, there's a lot of crunching you would have to figure out to get a system that could pull comps that would enable players to make good decisions. You'd have to make sure to broadcast it at the beginning of the game or before you get in the queue. Hey, here's what's currently in the rotation, so players aren't saying, well, I can go for Hextech this game, right? And then realize, oh, but Shapeshifters and Blade Masters aren't in, so I can't get Camille and I can't get Jace, so Hextech is actually going to be bad. I can't really play it. And therein lies one of the biggest issues you have with Teamfight Tactics, in that the more characters you add, which is Riot's general goal of trying to increase the longevity of their games, that's not really an option that they have, unfortunately. The other issue you're going to run into with Teamfight Tactics is adding more items is a very similar thing that Riot would really want to say, oh, I really want to add a bunch more items in order to, you know, spice up the pool, give more options. But again, the more items you add to the game, the harder it becomes to find the items you're specifically looking for, potentially. And again, this ends up being a situation where Teamfight Tactics has a problem. The other issue is TFT, at the end of the day, is slaved to League of Legends. I mean, you can't play Teamfight Tactics unless you have the League of Legends client downloaded, where the game is League of Legends. The Play Now button at the top is mostly going to be League of Legends game modes. Almost everything on this platform is based around the core game mode. And so, sure, that's one thing that you can possibly consider with League of Legends, and, you know, okay, maybe that's not that big of a deal, but at the very least, there's no TFT client. I'm not downloading this client to play Teamfight Tactics. I'm downloading it to play League of Legends, and hey, this is an extra game mode. It's sort of tucked away in League of Legends, and that doesn't do anything for the viability of the game mode as a whole, because if it's attached to League, and League dies, well, no one's going to keep playing Teamfight Tactics. This game itself is not going to save the day. The other and final problem I think you run into with Teamfight Tactics is the fact that it's not easily monetizable. League of Legends had plenty of cosmetic options that you were able to go for, to the point where that's pretty much what's sustaining the game at this stage in the game. I mean, that's what is going to be making Riot money. That's their money spinner. That's what they really want to do, is producing skins and make sure that players are going to be buying them. Teamfight Tactics, you again don't have that ability. Sure, you can add more Little Legends, but the fact that you can't buy the ones you want is really sort of a nail in the coffin for the mode, because you don't have the ability to say, oh, well, this is the only Little Legends I want, but maybe I'll buy a bunch because I want to get the tier 3. You can't do that. And again, that's another thing that's going to prevent your long-term viability, because unless people are really willing to gamble away their money, which increasingly is not the case, plenty of people are sort of realizing at this point, oh, hey, maybe we should be, you know, more concerned about these sort of predatory gaming practices, things like, you know, spending all of your money on a game in the hopes that you'll get the thing that you want to. And you have plenty of other things doing it recently, like you have the whole gacha game scenario, and lots of people that are basically hoping that you gamble your money away. But as awareness develops, people will stop doing that. And then Teamfight Tactics isn't turning you a profit. It doesn't have the depth in order to make it a long-term game mode. There's a lot that just ends up breaking about it. So I don't say all of this because I hate Teamfight Tactics and I want it to disappear and I want Riot to refocus on League of Legends. You know, no, nothing that serious. What I do want to talk about, though, is that generally speaking, if Riot's hopes are pinning themselves on Teamfight Tactics being their sort of savior in a year where people have been very disappointed with League of Legends as it currently exists, they are going to be sorely mistaken, and they're not going to have a good time, because this game mode does not have the depth or the long-term longevity. And so it's at the point where you have to hope that Riot are developing another game in order to stave things off, or they have to really right the ship with League of Legends and find a way to make players excited about it again in the same vein that they were back in 2013, 2014, in order to turn things around. Because TFT, while great and while a lot of fun, is not really what they're going to have that's going to fix things. But anyways, those are just my thoughts. Go ahead and let me know your opinions on Teamfight Tactics or anything I discussed in the video down in the comment section below. Would love to hear your thoughts. If you enjoyed today's video, go ahead and leave a like. And if you really enjoyed today's video, consider subscribing. I upload a video every Monday, Friday, and on patch days as well. Once again, thank you guys so very much for watching. I do appreciate it. And I'll talk to you all later.